To order. And Donna, please note that Commissioner Ross and I are present. Commissioner Hazelhorse is absent. And we're live on Facebook, I guess, tonight. This is new for me. So we welcome anyone who's watching. We're going to be talking tonight about the sales tax. Any questions or concerns people might have, feel free to send us a question. We'll try to answer it. And we'll try to provide information. With us tonight is Bill Ring, our Public Works Director. We have Donna Maskus, our County Clerk. Commissioner Roth is with us. We have Jason Kennedy. He is our Health Services Director. And Darren Myers, our Interim County Administrator. And like I say, feel free to join us, ask us questions. We'll try to answer it. And with that, we will turn things over to Darren so he can provide some education.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for tuning in with us tonight to talk about the sales tax. Went home to change some clothes to prepare for this tonight, and in my mailbox is my official ballot that came in the mail today. So they are coming to everybody's mailboxes today, and it's good timing for us to be here. So I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. We'll spend a couple minutes just doing a brief overview of what to expect with the sales tax, what the questions are about, and kind of review those. And like Commissioner Slyer said, if anybody has any questions, we'll do it best. I got my phone here in front of me to help address any questions that may come before the commission, or Bill, Donna, or myself, so as well as Jason. So we'll get started. The sales tax ballot will be in your mail today, or it should be in most of the mailboxes today. There is going to be two questions that you're going to be asked to vote on. Just to be clear on either vote, a vote for a yes vote will mean that you would be in favor of allowing Ellis County to impose impose either one of those taxes. And a no vote for either one would say that you do not want the sales tax imposed. And looks like Bill's trying to view it on his phone as well. But each voter has the option to vote yes for one or the other, vote no for one or the other, or vote no for either. So that is kind of a brief overview. The two questions summarized, question one is a general health care tax. It'll be a 1/4 cent sales tax that would be imposed, and we would start it on October 1st of 2020. It would last for 10 years and sunset after that period. What a health care tax is a tax that we could use specifically for health services within Ellis County. And since it's a specific function of a county to provide those services, EMS, health department and such, Ellis County gets to keep 100% of that sales tax, which would be roughly $1.5 million. The second 1/4 cent sales tax that you would be voting yes or no on is for a general purpose tax. Now, that general purpose tax can be used for anything, and the commission has somewhat identified that that needs to help with funding the road and bridge projects that we have out in the county. But since that is a function of multiple governments, both county and municipal governments, that has to be split throughout the county. So that $1.5 million that would be generated from that 1/4 cent tax would be split between Ellis County, the city of Hayes, the city of Ellis, Victoria, and Shinshin. Ellis County would receive about 42% of that tax, and which roughly would be about $650,000. So that's an overview of the two taxes, and ask our IT guy in the back of the room to pop up our first slideshow of the night, just to kind of give you some brief examples of what the sales tax would actually fund. So that first question, the healthcare tax, would be that 1/4 cent first tax for the healthcare would be specifically designed for EMS and the health department. The way we kind of had it broke down, just to show the transparency of how it could be used, would be of that $1.5 million, we would be able to take roughly about $300,000 of it and swap out the property tax or revenue that comes in for the general fund for the health department and replace it with sales tax revenue, which would basically eliminate the health department completely off the general fund. The other part of that tax, a big part of it, goes to the EMS, and we'd be able to put back about $170,000 a year for our EMS department to put into capital to help replace different equipment, cardiac monitors, cots, ambulances, and such. And then the remaining roughly $1 million would go to help offset the general fund with revenues for the sales tax, to take the general fund property tax off for EMS as well. The second part of that is the general tax, is how would that be used? And we could many different options, but what has been identified is that the county could actually take roughly that $650,000 and use it to fund some bonds to be able to do different road projects that Bill's identified in Public Works. There's many different projects out there, and Bill will speak to those. But we'd be able to finance about a $9 million bond over 10 years to be able to take that $650,000 and make that annual bond payment. So as Mike, our IT guy, switches over to the next slide, you can see exactly where all those are split up, and down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that the different cities in the county could use that money and how much that money would go to them as well. So one thing that we commonly get asked when we are out talking in public, we've had many town halls, we've been to many different luncheons and meetings with the community to discuss this, is the sales tax. We already pay sales tax. Why are you asking us to pay more? So as we move over into the next slide, it identifies to the public that it is true you do pay sales tax on whatever you buy in Ellis County. However, Ellis County does not receive any of it, no matter what you buy or where you buy it at within Ellis County. As you can see, just a normal purchase here In Hayes, you'd pay about 8.25 cent sales tax. Of that 8.25 cent, 6.5 would go to the state, and the other 1.75% would go to the city of Hayes. Ellis County would receive zero of it. Our general fund, our operations, has 0% funding from any sales tax revenues gained for Ellis County. And as you can see, when you look at that slideshow all the way around Ellis County, some of the comparison counties or the counties right next to us, all of those counties have a individual sales tax to help fund their general fund. So if you also look farther, and it's not actually on this slide, but if you compare it to other counties throughout the state of all 105 counties, you can say that, or you can see that Ellis County is only one of 14 counties in the entire state that does not have a countywide sales tax. Looking down on my phone because I see we have some stuff being popped up. And Randy Schamberger, I apologize if I didn't say that right, had a question is if it is off the general fund, then what would the freed up money for the general fund be used for? At this point, we've had budget discussions within the commission that even if both sales tax were to pass, we will not be looking to increase budgets, buying new equipment, hiring more personnel, because the financial forecast for the county, our expenditures need to stay where they're at. It's just the revenue on the other end of the budget needs to have that budget to help us sustain what the services we have currently within Ellis County. So that doesn't mean we're going to be putting more ambulances on the street. We're not going to be paving more roads. So those are some of the examples. So I hope that answers your question there. Getting back onto the sales tax, some of the questions might be, well, what has the commission done over the past several years? And if we look at the spending and taxes slide, Mike, you can see the way we sit now with the 2020 budget. Our 2020 budget is actually less than it was 8 years ago back in 2012. There's been several things that the commission has worked on over the past couple of years to help reduce expenditures, to reduce our budget, to help our financial forecast over the next 10 years. Some of those things that have been cut, one of the big areas is outside agencies. Almost every single agency has been cut. That includes High Plains Mental Health, DSNWK, Ellis Free Fair. There's about 15 of them, the Arts Council.
Pretty much every single part of outside agencies took some cut last year, some a considerable amount of money, some completely cut. So
some of the other things the commission has done, we looked at healthcare. Everybody knows that healthcare costs are going up. The equation that we use for employee to employer cost for the cost of health insurance, we've actually passed on more costs to the employees. Bill out of Public Works over the last couple years, they've reduced about 12 employees out there. Other staff positions in the county have also been eliminated. There's been several departments that have combined. Department heads have been positions combined to help eliminate positions there. Anything else from the commission that stands out that some of the big cuts we've looked at over the last couple of years?
I think you've done a good job there, Darren.
yeah, we've
Some of the big
combined
ones.
some positions
Yeah.
that were relatively high-paying positions are now asking some employees to handle both of those. So Jason's an example of that. We haven't rehired for the position Jason was in before he took his new position, which is 2 large positions in the county, and so he's handling it relatively well, but it is not ideal for us to have people doing so much. But they've really stepped up to the plate, and we've found quite a bit of savings from those type of things. It's just on the backs of our employees, and it'll continue to be that way as we move forward.
So I thought somebody was going to say something there. If we continue to look at expenditures, or if we move off of expenditures and look at revenues, we can see that revenues have also decreased over the years. As everybody in Ellis County knows, oil and gas taxes are a big part of Ellis County, and everybody knows within the oil field business these days that those valuations are lower. When those valuations go lower, that impacts our revenues. If you look at over the past couple years, a state mandated change was in regards to mortgage registration fees. Over the years, over $1 million each year was collected for those mortgage registration fees, and that has now been taken away, and those fees are collected and stayed with at the state. So when you couple those reductions and then you look at valuations compared to or revenues compared to expenditures, you become unbalanced, and you start dipping into your reserves and your funds, and those start getting to a point where we become depleted and we don't have much money in reserves to help offset the expenditures. So you've cut the reserves, you cut your expenditures, and you cut your reserves, and your revenues continue to go down. That's one of the main reasons why the county is in the situation where we are now, and bringing the sales tax to a vote. If we move on to the next slide, it's just another comparison on different budgets throughout the state. And as you can see, or I hope you guys can see on the screen, the Ellis County on that line chart is in bright red. And if you can look, our budget has basically stayed flat over the last 8 years. If you look at the other counties that are compared, of Barton, Finney, Ford, Harvey, McPherson, Saline, and Seward County, all their budgets have been increased. And one of the interesting questions that we had at our last town hall meeting in Hayes was, what if we look at our 2012 budget and just look at the annual inflation each year? Where would our budget be if we started that inflation rate back in 2012 to today? And our budget should be about $4.5 million in where we're at, just to keep up with inflation from 8 years ago. So as you can tell, there's a big dip there. But you can tell all those other counties, they've tried to incorporate and think of inflation, and their budgets have continued to go up. Another key point on this slide that you can look at is all those other counties of Barton, Finney, Ford, Harvey, McPherson, Saline, and Seward, they all have at least a 1% sales tax for their county. And that's another, kind of brings us to another question that we usually get, or a comment that we usually get, is if we increase the sales tax here, I'm just going to go shop in Salina more. Well, that's absolutely not what we want to happen. But a key thing to point out is if you do go to Salina and make a purchase, even if both of these sales tax pass, you're already going to pay twice the amount of sales tax on your purchase if you go to Salina. So that's one thing to point out there. As we move on to the next slide and we talk about the different services and worst case scenario if the sales tax doesn't pass, what are we actually going to look at for alternatives? One thing that hampers us as Ellis County is the state has imposed a tax lid law. That tax lid law basically limits the counties on the amount of property tax that they can increase each year. From last year to this year, when we figured our budget, that was only a 1.5% increase, which is only about $200,000. If you look at these two sales taxes, if they were to both pass, the revenue there would be $2.2 million. So there's a big gap there. So even if the commission would choose to raise taxes, there's no way they could possibly raise enough taxes by law without taking it to a vote to the public. Anything over that 1.5% annual increase would be taken to the public. And a good thing to point out there, you take that to the public and you try to raise property taxes more than that 1.5%. Everybody sitting here at this table realizes if we increase property taxes, 100% of that is going to be paid by our citizens, our residents here in Ellis County that own property, because about 70 to 75% of our general fund revenue comes from property taxes. So that's a good reason when we start looking at the sales tax. A couple different studies to refer to and some interesting facts is going back to our first slide, which we don't have to go back to it, but Ellis County has a pull factor of 1.66. There's two different studies that were done, and over the last couple of years in regards to what that actually means. So we start looking at sales tax. One of the studies that the city of Hayes done when they were looking at their retail marketing, trying to attract businesses, they did a study, and they estimated that company estimated that about 66% of the sales tax that is collected comes from residents outside of Ellis County. So that's a big portion, and that if we start pulling in sales tax, that burden would be less on our Ellis County residents, and we would be transferring some of that burden onto residents that come into Ellis County. When people come to shop, eat, play, stay, go to a baseball game and such, they drive our county roads. They could potentially have a medical emergency and call the EMS department. They can get in a car accident and have fire, law enforcement with sheriff deputies and fire, EMS, and law enforcement all there. So there's high potential that they could be using some of the services in our county, however, just not paying for them. Another part, a study, when we start looking at sales tax and how it's important, is that retail pull factor of 1.66. A retail pull factor of 1 means that for every person that comes into Ellis County to shop, there's one person that goes out. So basically, that's the way it sits. A retail pull factor of 1.66 means that for every 3 local residents buying goods here in Ellis County, there are 2 people traveling into Ellis County to shop and pay that sales tax. And that's a complicated formula from the Department of Revenue, how they figure that. And on that first slide, it actually has 1.68 or 1.66. The current numbers for 2019 is actually increased. It's 1.68 now. And if you look at the top 100 cities throughout the entire state of Kansas, Ellis County is tied, or the city of Hayes is tied for the 5th best pull factor, which means the retail pull factor of attracting people into our community. We have the 5th best pull factor in the entire state. Also, a good thing to point out, which we don't have a slide for, is just talking about our property taxes. We look at effective commercial property tax rates and as well as residential property tax rates. In both categories, Ellis County is ranked number 1 in the state. We have those effective tax rates for property taxes have the best. We have the lowest mill levy of all 105 counties in the state. But to be honest, on the back end of that, we also have higher property values. So that's how that equals out. But getting back, I guess, into the alternatives of, okay, let's look at it. If the ballots come in and the sales tax don't pass, what are some of the options we're going to be looking at? That's the hardest question probably for all of us sitting up here, is how are we going to address those issues? There's several different things, and none of them at all mean to be threatening in any way. It's just options that have to be put on the table to figure out to be able to function as a county government, but also be able to stay within our reasonable resources with the amount of revenue that comes in. We can't just overspend. So some of those options, there's property taxes will continue to have to increase over the years. There's going to have to be certain reductions to services. We can't necessarily identify what those are at this point, but there's different things that work, different level of services from many different departments. Could be looking at public works, maybe not grading as many roads or prolonging the life of the roads by not repairing them as much. It might be some different services or not quite the amount of services at our health department or our EMS department. There's a lot of options out there. Look at continued increases for our employees for their health insurance. We could look at further staff reductions if it gets to that point. As you can tell, all of those examples are not what the community is going to want. They expect a good level of service that we do provide, and we would like to continue to provide that, but we have to be able to sustain our county government with the amount of revenue that we are pulling in. So with that, I think that's a good overview. I don't know how long I've been talking, so I think it's a good time to bring somebody else into the mix. So I will let, we can flip a coin and let either Bill or Jason talk, but our next slide, I guess, talks about property taxes, and I think Jason uses that in his slide and talking about our EMS services, so I will pass it off to Jason.
Yeah, so thanks, Darren. It's Jason Kennedy, Ellis County Health Services. Health Services is actually a combined role between Ellis County EMS and the Ellis County Health Department. In most of these talks that I've done, I generally talk about response times. I talk about our level of service. I talk about what we provide to the community. But although all those things are important, our response times are great. They're a little more than half of what the nation's average is. That is an important figure. But I think tonight we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the unprecedented times that we're in. And in times like this, I think the important conversation and the thing that I want to tell you guys is I want to tell you about the group of people that I'm fortunate enough to work with. I'm fortunate enough to have a team of highly devoted, highly educated, and highly trained people that work for both Ellis County Health Department and Ellis County EMS. These people are certified to the highest level in the state. Every truck has a paramedic. We provide one of the highest levels that you can get anywhere. We're at your door in 4.5 minutes. We operate out of 3 stations, Ellis, Victoria, and Hayes, and we treat everybody regardless of what's going on. And with everything that's going on in the world, we are there 24/7, 365. These guys have been willing to leave their families to go to work every day. The health department's been working 7 days a week to monitor the situation out there, to partner with the community, to educate the community, to take phone calls, to continue to treat patients, and to do everything we can to help mitigate and educate. These people that I get to work with are truly phenomenal. They're an asset to this community, and the service that they provide to the community outside of numbers is just something that we can't take for granted. And in times like this, I know it's tough for anybody to look at a financial situation, but these people have never thought about the financial situation. They walk away from their families every time they go on shift, and they've even offered. So we have a staff of 5 people at the health department. So all of the COVID-19 that's going on is being handled by 5 full-time people. I have a group of EMTs, paramedics, and AMTs that have volunteered to go to the health department and help out should this situation arise. They're willing to take more time away from their families. They're willing to add to their level that they're willing, their risk level that they're willing to accept, also that they can serve and protect the community. They do all this. It's $80 per household of 170. If your house is worth $170,000, $80 a year is what it costs you to have 24/7, 365. People that are willing, and no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what's going on in the world around you, these people that I'm fortunate enough to work with, these people that I'm fortunate enough to serve the community with, are willing to go and do that every single day. And I think that's the important message, is that they are always there. They want to be there. We want to continue to serve the public, and we have to find a way to pay for it. And this is that ask. We're asking that we can continue to serve the public in this capacity. They're asking to continue to serve the public in this capacity. We just need to be able to afford to do it.
Jason, I think one of my favorite parts about these is when you discuss what a paramedic can do. And since we offer that level of service, how unique that is in Western Kansas, and how proud we are of that. You're always good to say almost everybody you have on staff does the best job that they can do, but there is a different level of service for paramedics. And part of the reason we were having this discussion, which I feel is a business discussion regardless of how the economy looks, how we're fighting the coronavirus right now, we still have to make business decisions just like all of us around here. Can you explain what a paramedic can do on a scene? Because that was something that was new and a realization for me when I became a commissioner that I didn't know before. I thought it was almost the same thing, an EMT paramedic. So if you could explain that in terms of especially our retirement population in Ellis County, which is ever growing, and what we're hoping to grow and be more robust with.
Yeah. So we actually have all 3 levels of service in the state. Well, there's a 4th level EMT responder, which actually, or first responder level, which I won't take anything away from those guys. We actually, we talk about Darren's department. He has a large amount of first responder and then EMT level people that are even on the rural fire department. So we have a great group of responders in the community. We have a great group of people in town. I'm just fortunate enough to work with the EMS. So on the EMS side, we have both EMTs, AEMTs, and paramedics. So really the difference in the levels is our EMTs do a phenomenal job. They're highly trained. They do a great job. But their level of care based on the scope, the state scope of practice is very limited. They're able to really assess the situation. They're able to do some basic interventions and take some vitals, things like that, basic interview and transport. Now, when you move up to an AEMT, which is the intermediate level in the middle, they're able to do the things the EMT can do, but they're actually able to add on some additional airway adjuncts. They're able to do some first-line cardiac medications, but they have a very limited scope of practice, too, as far as the state's concerned. Then when you get up to the paramedic level, they really are able to do a wide range of things, everything from, we talk about intubation and ventilators, things like that. My guys, the paramedics are able to intubate, they're able to put people on ventilators, they're able to give a wide range of medications, not just first-line cardiac medications, but medications to fix blood sugars and a wide range of things. They're able to really go out, assess, begin that treatment, hopefully stabilize the patient, and get them in a better spot before transport. So time to intervention is really the most important piece. So the faster we can get those interventions that truly do impact life outcomes, the faster we can get those interventions, the better. Our guys are able to come out, they're able to start that intervention at your front doorstep or wherever we meet you. We're able to start that intervention with the goal of stabilizing that patient prior to getting them into the ED where they can further the treatment, or into an OR suite, ICU, or into the cath lab, anything like that. So we partner really well with Hayes Med, and we've got some really good protocols to really bypass for situations and create some great outcomes for patients in this community.
Yeah, the nice thing about this, and as part of the discussion with the commission when we decided on this healthcare tax, is that we would be able to continue this high level of service that we have. We thought of it as an economic driver, and in addition to our healthcare facilities in Ellis County, Hayes Med being a big part of that. It's a reason why people like to move to Ellis County in retirement, to get closer to healthcare. And this is just an add-on to that. It's 24/7 standby service, which is somewhat unheard of in all the rural counties around us, more rural counties than Ellis. So it was something that we spend money on. Our taxpayers spend money on it. We're proud of it. We're just a little concerned with the future and whether or not we can keep the service to the level that it is, because it is costly. We have to pay a paramedic what a paramedic is worth, otherwise they will go to other parts of the world where they're needed. So I think that was one of the big things from our commission, is we wanted my goal, whether or not these sales tax passed or failed, was to make sure that more people in Ellis County understood the level of service we were offering in EMS particularly.
I guess we don't usually ask this question, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. It's very easy to talk about EMS, but why don't we talk a little bit about what you all do at the health department? Not necessarily what we're dealing with today with COVID, but what are some of the services that the health department provides?
So the health department actually, one of the primary functions of the health department is our immunization program. With that, we actually, obviously we're bringing people in, flu shots, all that kind of stuff, but the health department doesn't just bring people into the building. We actually go outside the building and serve the public. We actually go and do immunization clinics at surrounding facilities, especially nursing homes, things like that. And you know, we have a pretty robust WIC program, so the WIC program actually serves really underprivileged or underserved youth in the community to make sure that we're getting them a good start as far as education, formula, all that kind of stuff. We have a pretty wide range. We actually have a preparedness program that we do, which is really important in uncertain times like this. We do a lot of education, and especially even with this. Now, the primary function right now, and it's something that is obviously in the forefront of everything that's going on in the world right now, is the COVID-19. So with that, our primary function has shifted. Our primary function at this point is to monitor the situation, partner with the community and make sure that we are providing the best education that we can to try and protect the community, to try and get the community to follow the CDC, the KDHE guidelines, so that we can hopefully stem this stuff and hopefully keep this out of the community. And then if it does transfer into the community, our function shifts to making sure that we're doing that contact tracing portion. So we are the lead investigators for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. So they're driving the bus as far as in Kansas. We are the lead investigators for that. So we will go out after if something does happen, we would go out, investigate that. And it's not just COVID-19. It's actually any communicable diseases year-round we do that with. So our goal at that point would be to isolate, investigate, make sure we do the contact tracing portion, which is the most important, making sure that we're walking their steps back to see that, make sure that we've quarantined, isolated every step of that to keep that, to keep it from spreading. So we actually serve a lot of primary functions on the health department side. And then also on the EMS side, there's a lot of functions that people don't even think about or don't even know about. It's, we truly are partners in the community as far as on both sides. Our ambulances are every football game. We do standbys all over the county. We do food drives. We do toy drives. We do the Angel Tree program. We are in every parade. We are available for tours. We do everything we can to educate the community, to be involved in the community, to be tied into that framework so that if something happens, we're there, we're ready, and we know what's going on. The health department, same thing on the education side. And then obviously when you have a situation like is going on in the world right now, it's really important to have those additional medical personnel that are highly trained and able to deal with the situation as they come.
All right. Well, I guess we can try to figure out a quick transition to go from EMS to the Public Works Department. But I guess we can use the common one that if we all need help, we need a way to get there, and that falls into Bill's plate on making sure the roads are safe and adequate and maintained so that way we can get there. So I will pass it off over on to Bill and let him talk.
Thank you, Darren. Bill Ring, Director of Public Works. Public Works is the largest both in budget dollars and employees in the county. It has 4 divisions, which I oversee: noxious weed, the environmental planning and zoning, the solid waste, which is our landfill transfer station, and then the road and bridge department, that being the largest of the 4. And as Darren alluded to, we want to make sure, not just for getting emergency responders to you in need, but we want safe roads. That's the most important thing that we look at every day. We want safe roads. They take a lot of abuse from traffic, from the weather. The last 3 years, Ellis County's had a 3-year history of 100 inches of rain. That doesn't bode well with gravel and rock roads. I oversee 1,400 miles of road in the county. 140 of that approximately is paved. So the rest of it is rock, sand, and gravel. High maintenance, a lot of wear and tear. But we're out there every day with road graders. We have 12 zones in the county. Each one has approximately 100 miles. And we're out there maintaining every day. One of the big issues we've run into over the last, and it's before I transition out to road and bridge, is the number of staff. We've lost in 10 to 12 years, we've lost that amount, about that many people, which makes it hard because it's a very labor-intensive job to maintain roads. Another issue that we run up against, and it's in everything in life, is the cost of equipment and technology. In 2012, it cost us approximately $200,000 for a road grader. Here in 2020, I'm looking at a 50% increase where road graders are going to be $300,000. And we only get about 8 years life out of a road grader before we need to trade it off. We have 200 bridges in the county. Those bridges need to be inspected every 2 years, which we have done. We have a licensed engineering firm that goes out. It's a rather large expense for the county. It's about $25,000 for that service, but we want our bridges to be safe. Bridges have an estimated life of 75 years. I have 25 bridges now that are over 75 years old. They're in good shape. We maintain them. We make sure that we go over after the engineers do their reports. Our bridge foreman sits with the engineer and develops a plan should it be anything beyond routine maintenance to keep the bridges up. A good example would be the bridge that's on the Ellis Blacktop as you head north out of the county over the Saline River. That needs the deck replaced. We've been looking into that for the last 2 years. But just a simple deck replacement on that bridge is $450,000. Construction and road construction is extremely expensive. The county administrator and we looked into what it would take to do complete maintenance on our asphalt roads and bridges if we were to try to keep them serviced like you would like to see in what I would say would be a perfect world. And I would need an additional $8 million a year in revenue just to do that, which would be over twice my overall budget for road and bridge, and it would be equivalent almost to what I have for the 4 divisions of public works. We want to make sure, like I said, that roads are important. We don't want accidents. We don't want people getting injured. We don't want, anything to occur. And we want to make sure that we've got them available, like I said earlier, not just so that if Jason has to get an ambulance out in the county to your house, but we also want to make sure that the commodity people, the farmers, the oil field people that are running across the roads every day, that they've got good, safe roads as well.
The interesting fact that we usually point out when we go out to town hall meetings is, as you said, you have 1,400 miles of road. You put that in perspective, how far is that in 1,400 miles? Well, we always use the term to tell everybody it's just under 100 miles short if you were to drive to Hayes to New York City. That's quite a distance and quite a amount of roads that you do maintain over there.
The other thing that I think has been showing up a lot on our social media feeds is a question of roundabouts, especially from the Hayes community. Bill, you might tell them what does Ellis County have to do as far as funding or help with a roundabout project, and kind of how that works, because we're working on a build grant project that is nearly $10 million. So we might hit on that just so everybody understands as we go through on this, and maybe Butch, maybe this is a question for Butch, since it was something that you maybe were prepared for.
Commissioner, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I'll see what I can do with it. The roundabouts. It's a City of Hayes issue. The City of Hayes got a federal grant to build roundabouts, and it's my understanding they're going to put in about 4 of them up there on Vine Street from 32nd Street and north. That grant is to build roundabouts for the City of Hayes. The county is not involved in that at all. And anyone listening could be assured that the county will not expend any indirect or direct resources on the roundabouts. That is a city issue. If the city decides not to build roundabouts, they have to give that money back to the feds. So they're locked into it contractually. Much the same way as we got a federal grant to build the Northwest Corridor project. If we don't do it, we have to give the money back. It's not our money to spend otherwise. So, but let's just assure the public, we are not involved in roundabouts. Never have been, never wanted to be, and we're not going to be.
Yeah, I think that's something that comes up quite a bit with me, and the idea of grants, and sometimes it's confusing in terms of the way government spends money. But when you get a grant to do a specific project, it's tied to that project 100%. We can't fix our county budget with the $6.5 million grant we got from the federal government to do the Northwest Business Corridor. We have to build the Northwest Business Corridor. We have to spend our funds to help build the Northwest Business Corridor, and we have to use the state of Kansas's funds, and all the unique ways that we figured out how to fund that $10 million project all has to go towards that. So we can't just automatically fix Ellis County's budget issues with that over the next couple of years, although we are taking care of a relatively intensive stretch of road that I know causes quite a bit of problems for Road and Bridge. So they're excited to get that project done. You know, it's something that has nothing to do with the county. The roundabouts have nothing to do with us. So it's amazing how on social media those type of questions and discussions start happening on a tax that we're proposing. It's just not, it has nothing to do with us. So hopefully that clears things up for people as much as possible.
I will interject if I might, and I have a great working relationship with the City of Hayes Public Works. The Public Works directors and I, you know, we meet occasionally and just go over things. But on the roundabouts, to speak to it on behalf of the city, it's basically a $9 and change million project. They got $6 million from the feds. The $3 million that they're putting up will not come from the city coffers either. It will come from tax money, transient guest tax, which means if you stay in a motel or hotel up around the interstate, whatever, there's a certain amount of tax that you will pay on your hotel bill. And that's where the city will be getting their $3 million to pay for it.
Another interesting thing, going back to the Northwest Business Corridor too, is the big development that's going in there. And some of the questions we've got in regards to that is, how is that going to impact our budget or with here in Ellis County? And a short, simple answer, I guess you could say, is even if they put that complete $40 million project in, that project is being tax abated for the next, I believe, 15 years for their tax incremental financing, their TIF district. So even if they put in $40 million in infrastructure right now, the county for the next 15 years won't be gaining any property tax on that. But then some may ask, well, then what about all the sales tax? Because they're estimating, if I remember right, it was just over $30 million a year in retail sales they'll have up there. Well, as it sits now, and as if everybody remembers from earlier when we were speaking, Ellis County is not having a sales tax. So it doesn't matter if that $30 million comes in. As it sits now without a sales tax, Ellis County would not receive any benefit from that. Unless the sales tax were passed, or in 15 years, once those abatements come off, then the property tax valuations would go up, and we would be able to see revenues there. But that's just another interesting thing to point out on how that's coming out. There are other indirect ways that will help Ellis County. It may attract more businesses, more residents, maybe some new homes and such. But the two biggest points is you put $40 million in. We don't get to see that. All the increased retail sales that will be happening up there, because we don't have a sales tax, we wouldn't be getting any of it. So I would suggest, if there is anybody listening, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask. There are some out there, but we'll address them. But how about we go around there? How about Donna? Let's give Donna some time to speak. And as everybody can see, this is my ballot that I got in the mail. You probably can't see that. It probably just looks like a white envelope. But maybe we'll give Donna just a few minutes to explain what that ballot is about.
Sure. The ballots were to be delivered today or tomorrow. So everybody, active voters, should have received them. If you did not receive a ballot and you felt like that you should have, please contact our office, and our number is 785-628-9410, and we'll be glad to check in why that voter did not get a ballot for this election. We did have some ballots walked in today, so we probably have, I believe, 6 ballots that came in. Had 3 ballots that came in because we know our society is so mobilized that they moved, and the ballot will not be forwarded. It goes to where you're registered to vote. So if you have any questions, please come into our office, and we're glad to help. Another thing I wanted to point out, don't forget to sign your ballot envelope. It's very clear on there. There's instructions. That's very important, because we have to verify that that voter voted that ballot by that signature. So please don't forget that. Ballots have to be back in our office by noon on April the 7th. Thank you.
I guess we can go around the horn and just ask if there's anything that the commissioners or Jason and anybody else thought of anything that may add to the discussion.
I can get started here. From my perspective, this is just a business decision, as I said earlier, between us and the voters, whether or not they're satisfied with the services that we provide right now and how they would like to fund them in the future. I think that this is a good learning opportunity for everyone, regardless of whether you want to vote yes or no for this. From our perspective, we don't advocate for it. We just allow for a decision to be made. So we're happy to let everybody have their say right in the ballot box, and we will make adjustments as needed as this is over. Being a small business owner, own a couple small businesses, this is definitely a tough time to go for an ask from the voters. But just as I said, even businesses that are making tough decisions, we need to make a decision as a county of how we run in the future and what we plan to do. And I believe that our commission is ready to make the adjustments as necessary. The other thing that might be noted is because of the way the oil has been lately, we're getting obviously notifications about our valuations for the county, and it will definitely go down, and we will likely need to find more money in our budget over the next budget cycle because of that. So I think the good question about what changes in our budget and things like that came from online are, as such, we don't plan to spend more money. We plan to keep the services the way they are without lessening them. And as of right now, what is happening is we have spent down some of our unencumbered cash over the last 8 years, if you see from the charts that you saw. So as that cash gets to a point where we need to have a certain amount on hand in case of disasters and things like that we need to fund before we get relief from the state or federal government, we see a need to have a certain level of unencumbered cash available. Also, we need to start being able to put money away for capital investments in the future, and that's something that our commission desires to do. But we, at every juncture you can imagine, it's not easy for us to make cuts to things like High Plains Mental Health, to DSNWK, to our staff, to the reimbursements for health insurance. These aren't easy things for us to do. They're tough decisions that we've already made. And I imagine even if both of these pass, I feel like Commissioner Slyer and I will still have tough decisions to make in the future. This will just help fund the things as we have now, and hopefully I would like to make a little bit more concerted effort on the 3 mile zone around Hayes, the extraterritorial jurisdiction that gets quite a bit of traffic because of the Hayes community, and a lot of people, I think that's a concern between us and the city, and what we're trying to work out is that people don't understand when they're on one of our county roads and when they're on one of the city of Hayes' roads. It's kind of a muddied water there, and we would like to take care of our portion. We'd like to get working with the city of Hayes to make sure that we're well taken care of, and the Northwest Business Corridor is a perfect start to that project and in that future. Other than that, we do have a couple road projects that are looming. Cathedral Road in Victoria is going to be a relatively expensive project that we have to figure out how to fund because of the uniqueness of the size of that community and how a county and city work together on those type of things. So from me, like I said, this is a business decision. I hope you can take a step back, learn as much as you can about it, and vote. Take your time, get your vote. It will get counted, and we'll start moving forward in the county with whatever direction our voters decide to go.
Well spoken. Should the sales taxes not pass, we're going to have to start cutting departments. We're going we're not going to cut budgets across the board, but we're going to have to start looking at prioritizing departments and services. And the further into the future we get without more revenue, the bleaker it's going to get. But I will not hesitate to cut anyone's budget, cut anyone's service, because we just need money to operate. We're mandated by the state to provide certain services, and for those mandates, we'll just do the best we can with what we have at any given time, and hopefully we won't have to look at this kind of situation, but if we do, we'll make it. The commissioners are capable of making it.
I would like to, we're talking about, Jason alluded to some of the troubling times we're in right now. I would like to give, on a positive note, a shout out to our sheriff at Harbin. Tomorrow, his father, Dr. Calvin Harbin, will celebrate his 104th birthday. That's a milestone.
So congratulations to him.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Jason, Donna, you have anything?
Well, moving forward, we're at right about an hour. I don't know if we have any questions online that need directly answered. Okay. I would say feel free to ask questions in the future. We'll post this video, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. You can catch me on my phone number on the website or send me an email. I'm kind of a busy guy, but I always try to get back to anybody who gets a message to me. I'm happy to talk about this stuff. Like I said, I don't think that we're here to advocate one way or another. We just want a learning process, and if the whole end of this is that people learned a little bit more about what county services are and what we do, that's a positive as well. So it's tough and trying times, and so I'm happy to be a part of the county and blessed to serve everybody, and hope that we can decide and make a decision and move forward. Otherwise, we're setting it right about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I'd like to recap something, just a couple quick things before I turn it back over to our commission chair. Just as a reminder, as Donna said, the ballots should be coming to your mailbox today. Make sure you fill those out. A yes vote means you're in favor for the county to impose the tax, and a no vote is to you do not want the tax. You can vote for one, yes or no vote for one or the other, or no for both of them. So that's how that plays out. Please make sure that they are received to the clerk's office by April 7th. That does not mean postmarked. They have to be in the clerk's office by noon on April 7th. But with that, I did just want to give a quick level of praise to our health department director, Jason. He alluded to a lot of different things in the world that's going on today, and we're fortunate currently in Ellis County. We have no positive cases, but I just wanted to tell you that you're doing a great job. He's communicating well with all of our community partners, with Hayes Med, our private physicians, our coroners, our public safety agencies. He's really stepped up. I've really enjoyed working with him over the last couple months, and Ellis County should be proud that he's doing a real good job for what he's doing. So I guess you want to say something.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I'll tell you what, there's nothing I could have done over the last 2.5 months that wasn't done with the staff, and that's what I talked about. I've got the greatest group of people in the world. They're willing to cross-train. They're willing to do whatever to serve and protect the public, and it's at a time like this, having people like that on your side is extremely important. And I'm going to give my public service announcement here on this COVID-19 stuff. It's impossible to avoid this situation. So really I encourage everybody to go out there, reach for factual information. Make sure you're hitting the sites, KDHE, KS.gov. Make sure you're going to the CDC.gov. Make sure that you are finding that factual information and you're doing everything you can to empower yourself with that data to make good choices. Right now, the best choice you can make is a social distancing. So they talk about 6 feet for greater than 10 minutes. Really, it's 6 feet all the time. Try to avoid that interaction, that contact. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Good hygiene. Look out for everybody around you. We talk about the at-risk populations, so the elderly populations, making sure that we're doing everything we can to protect those around us. So the best thing you can do to protect them is to protect yourself, maintain that social isolation, or that social distancing piece, make sure you wash your hands, don't touch your face, all those things. Reach out for that good information. You can also follow us on Facebook. We try to place at least one FAQ every day. We also try to post some information on there. And we want to serve the public. Everybody that works for us wants to serve the public. Serve and protect is what we do. So on the health department and the EMS side, look out for yourself, be safe, wash your hands.
And before, one last thing is if there are any last questions, Mike just pointed to one of our boards that'll be on the screen here right before we end, I believe. But there's some information on our website. Go to the www.ellisco.net website and vote, or click on the Your Vote Count badge. It'll take you to our sales tax website. There's an informational video that kind of recaps everything that we spent an hour talking about down in about 9 minutes. All the slides that you see are on there. A lot of good information. You can call us at 628-9410, or you can send me directly an email in regards to the sales tax. The email address is salestax@ellisco.net. All that information is there on the website. Please feel free to reach out, ask any of your questions before you fill out your ballot. So
Yeah.
I will.
I want to add one thing. Probably one of the key points that I heard from Jason, I hope gets reiterated, is the good factual information comes from Jason's office. There's a lot of confusion. There are a couple Ellis counties in the United States of America, one of them being in Texas and being quite a bit bigger than Ellis County, Kansas, that has confirmed cases, and that is not us. We do not. So a lot of times, if you just take a moment to look and make sure that information is correct and factual before you share it, panic will not save or help anybody. We just need to be diligent about what we do in our lives, and some of that diligence comes from our social media pages. So take time. I'm amazed at the type of things people tell me every day. Even though I'm a county commissioner and a member of the County Board of Health, I get constant updates, but somehow they always know something that I'm supposed to not know, and that's not true. Jason reports directly to me and to the other commissioners, and we will try to keep you informed. Jason does a wonderful job of that. So definitely be diligent about the things that you post and try not to create panic. This thing will do a number on our economy regardless, but we can mitigate that by not sharing information that isn't factual.
Okay. I want to thank you all for being here tonight, and with that, we will adjourn this session.